Good morning. Welcome to virtual worship. We'll begin with our music for centering, Etude, book number 1, number 2, by Philip Glass, played by Sarah Hager on piano.
Good morning and welcome to First Parish in Lexington online. I hope you are all warm and dry in this seasonal weather. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation with love at the center of our values. We encourage all to share their truth and challenge ourselves to grow by responding to one another with openness, compassion, and care. My name is Suzanne. I'm one of the worship associates at First Parish. I hope you will join us next week when, weather permitting, we will be back in the sanctuary as well as online. Given that today's service is being live streamed, there will be no social hour, including online. And of course, the after church things that were planned for today are not happening this week and will be rescheduled for another time. Our senior minister, Reverend Ann Mason, is currently on sabbatical until March 26th. This week, our service will be led by our assistant minister, Phoebe Eckhart-Lee.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us online. I'd like to call us to worship this morning with a reading by Reverend Leslie Takahashi. This is about deep listening. Now, I had planned on having us listen to one another in the pews this morning, but as we're on Zoom, this will have to do. Listening is not an act of the ear. Listening is an act of the heart. In these times when so much speaks, outrage, anger, disillusionment, rage is a constant cry. Derision has found its voice. The despair of the fair and faithful speaks fast and often. The whisper of despair grows into a keening lament. Open our hearts to the real fears of those who have known hate, because they are our guides to its insidious expansiveness. Open our memories to those ancestors of our spirits who were love seekers, peacemakers, truth guiders, system questioners, and listen, because listening is an act of our hearts. Do not ignore the soul pain of the ones who move through the hardest nights, who face the denial of their rights and the desecration of their humanity. Do not forget those too dispossessed of a language of mastery and the countless forms of life who do not count humanity as their family, and yet who are within our larger circle of interdependence. Open our hearts to the true threats that many feel. Open our minds to the anguish of those who need accompaniment. Open our memories to those who came before us and taught us how to create new forms of love out of the old worn patterns. And listen, because listening is an act of our hearts. Listening is an act of our hearts. Let us worship together.
These words for the chalice lighting are by David Breeden. We light this chalice, remembering and honoring our own tradition and celebrating the rich diversity of traditions among us. As we search for justice, meaning, and purpose, may we remember that justice, meaning, and purpose live first in deeply listening to one another. Please join me now in the affirmation of our faith. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with divine. Now, please join in singing How Could Anyone, played by Sarah Hager on the piano.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Our reading this morning is called Generous Listening by Marilyn Nelson. And I heard her read this on the On Being podcast in 2018. A conversation can be a contest or a game of catch with invisible balloons. They bounce between us, growing and shrinking, sometimes floating like cloud medicine balls, and sometimes bowling at us like round anvils. You toss a phrase and understanding blooms like an anemone of colored lights. My mind fireworks with unasked questions. Who is this miracle speaking to me? And who is this miracle listening? What amazingness are we creating? Out of gray matter, a star spark of thought leaps between synapses into the air and pours through gray matter into my heart. How can I not listen generously? Here ends our reading.
These words for the offering are by Elizabeth Murphy. Your contributions are a tangible commitment to the mission and vision of First Parish. Each time you give, you renew this commitment, and as a result, your support is entwined with all that we believe, all that we do here together. This is its own special gift. In the spirit of trust and generosity, we gratefully accept the offering. An offering for the work of First Parish will now be received. You may point your camera at the QR code online, and we thank you for your generosity. Now, please enjoy Sarah Hager on the piano playing Gymnopédie No. 2 by Erik Satie.
Thank you, Sarah. It was beautiful. How can I not listen generously? Mhm. Listening is an act of the heart. It's a skill, a gift, a discipline. It's a way of saying, I care. It is a way of saying, you matter. It's a way of being fully present. So as we gather today on YouTube in our many homes bundled up against the sleet, I can hear the trucks outside. I wonder if you can. I invite you to listen, not just with your ears, but with your hearts, to what the still small voice inside you is saying. Listen to the world. Listen to subtle grief that may be passing through our lives. I'd like to talk about grief today and deep listening as an antidote, perhaps. Deep listening is an act of love that can speak to grief in all the ways that it moves through our lives. It is not easy to hold grief. It doesn't come neatly packaged, easily understood, or quickly resolved. And sometimes grief can feel ambiguous, as if we're unsure of its shape, its cause, or if that is truly what we're feeling. I have been feeling complicated grief amidst our current political landscape and all the personal and global things that are happening. I think this ambiguity is something many of us experience in our lives. And yet, when we open ourselves to listen, to truly listen, the grief often reveals its presence in unexpected ways. Through deep listening, we create the space where we can make sense of the many emotions that come with loss, even when those emotions don't look the way we think they should. Krista Tippet, the host of the podcast On Being, often explores the complexity of human emotions. And she has this beautiful phrase, generous listening, which is what drew me to choose the poem Generous Listening for us this morning. She talks about listening as a presence rather than a practice. And she talks about grief. She notes that grief is rarely straightforward. It's something that never fully leaves us. She says it's something that transforms but doesn't disappear. I think these words resonate with the nature of ambiguous grief, the kind of grief that sneaks up on us, that lingers in the background, that defies easy categorization. It is grief that might not come from one specific loss, but from the accumulation of many things. A loss of opportunity, a shift in identity, or the absence of something that we could never quite put into words. I imagine all of you may be holding an accumulation of many things, memories of the last 4 years, anticipatory grief for the next 4. I read a memoir in the last year called Grief is for People. It's by a writer named Sloane Crosley. She went to the same college that I did, which is how I found this book. I picked it up because the title Grief is for People made me think, well, I'm a person. That sounds compelling. And it's a beautiful memoir. It's a beautiful exploration of ambiguous grief. She writes about the experience of losing something significant without a clear endpoint. She describes a grief that's complicated and multifaceted, that doesn't just belong to one event or one moment in time. She is holding in this book the loss of her best friend and also a burglary where she's robbed in her home. And after she experiences this burglary, she tries to find a grief support group. to talk about what she's gone through, to talk about her feelings of violation, her feelings of being thrown off balance. And she can't find a group. She can't even find people who will really listen to her, because what she learns is grief is for people, not for things. Grief is about when someone dies, not when your jewelry box is stolen. And as the book goes on, we learn that grief is not just for people. Grief is for everything. And often it's the gift of someone listening to us deeply that helps us figure that out. It's not about neat closure. It's about the process of adapting to what's lost and finding our way through it, even as the feeling of loss is constantly evolving. In the midst of grief, we can find that deep listening can be a transformative act, a way to hold both the pain and the healing in the same breath. Marilyn Nelson's poem, Generous Listening, reminds us of the power of listening with intention. She writes, "A conversation can be like a contest or a game of catch with invisible balloons." A dear friend of mine, Ashley, sometimes talks about conversation tennis, when we're just ping-ponging thoughts back and forth and not really listening to one another. I think grief too can feel like an invisible game of catch. It might swell with moments of surprise, of insight, of understanding, but it can also feel overwhelming and heavy, like the weight of an anvil in our hearts. The contrasting images in this poem of balloons of conversation and anvils help us to capture the experience of ambiguous grief, how it can both uplift and burden us. The poet continues, "You toss a phrase and understanding blooms like an anemone of colored lights. My mind fireworks with unasked questions. Who is this miracle speaking to me? And who is this miracle listening?" In this verse, our poet captures the generosity and curiosity inherent in deep listening. When we listen generously, whether to others or to ourselves, we allow for the possibility of new insights, new understanding, and new healing. Our own griefs can speak to us in surprising ways if we are willing to listen, not with judgment or expectation, but with openness and love. When we listen generously to our own grief, we give it space to evolve and to transform. Just as Krista Tippet suggests, it's in these moments of generous listening that we can hear the question running beneath the surface of our grief. How can I not listen generously? Generosity in listening is not just about hearing another person's words. It's also about being present with all the complexities of their person and the complexities of our person as a listener. It's about listening to what is unsaid, to what is hidden beneath the surface. It's about being willing to sit in the discomfort, in the ambiguity, without rushing to fix and without rushing to move on. Listening is not just a passive act of hearing words, it's an active engagement with the world and with one another. It's a form of love, a love that acknowledges and holds space for all that complexity that another person experiences. It is an invitation to live our Unitarian Universalist values, to bear witness to someone's humanity, and in doing so, to allow them to be fully seen and heard. So today, I invite you to listen deeply. Listen again to the quiet spaces in between. Listen without expectation and listen without judgment. Let us strive to listen with generosity, knowing that in doing so, we are nurturing our own capacity for healing and for growth. Listening deeply can allow us to create a community where people can grieve openly, can celebrate openly without shame or fear of judgment. It allows us to say to one another, I see you, I hear you, and I'm here with you. In the silence that follows is where relationship begins. I know it's rich of me to say, I see you, I hear you, I am here with you, when I am on Zoom, coming to you live through YouTube from my home far away from yours. But I hope that this is an invitation to practice listening deeply to one another, with one another. May we listen with compassion, not erase the ambiguity of our lives, but hold the sacred space where healing can unfold. May we have the courage to sit with grief and to listen deeply to it and to honor its presence as we journey together. Amen, and may it be so. Please take a deep breath and join in singing Meditation on Breathing. I know you know this one, so sing whatever harmonies in your living room you want.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe out peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Thanks, Sarah. Now, please join me in the spirit of prayer or meditation, whatever feels safe and supported to you. Take a deep breath, settle into your seat, or let your breath take you somewhere else, somewhere other than your body, if your body is not a safe and supported place to be. If we were gathering in person today, I'd be inviting you to come to the back of the sanctuary and light candles to mark the joys and sorrows of your lives. I invite you now to conjure those in yourself. Think of what is bringing you joy. Think of what is bringing you sorrow. Try and carve out a little space behind your ribs to listen to what your soul is saying. Spirit of life, open our hearts and minds to hear beyond the surface. Help us to listen generously, deeply to the gifts we carry and the griefs we encounter. Let us find comfort in our listening, and let our listening be a balm to those who mourn. Listening is not just hearing. It is opening ourselves to the vulnerability of others, to the wisdom that comes from the space between us, and to the silence that carries stories unspoken. In listening, we create possibility for healing, for connection, and for transformation of grief into understanding. May we seek to transform our griefs into understanding, May we seek to understand ourselves and one another just a little bit more, bring a little bit more compassion and love into this world. May we hold space for ourselves and each other to grieve, to heal, and to grow. And may our listening bring comfort, connection, and understanding to all those we encounter. If this is a joyful day for you, may you go lifted in love, feeling the embrace of this community from far away. And if this is a hard day for you, know that you too are held in the loving embrace of this community. May it be so, and amen. To continue and close in the spirit of meditation and prayer, please join in singing our closing hymn, May I Be Filled with Loving Kindness.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
And now, in our comings and in our goings, may the light of love shine upon us, out from within us, and give us peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. We won't be having Zoom social hour, so why don't you go ahead and give a friend a call. But first, please listen to our postlude, Nuvole Bianche by Ludovico Einaudi, played by Sarah Hager.